Hey guys, Simon here from Wild Earth, and right now I'm actually in Patagonia in Puerto Natales, and tomorrow we're about to head out onto the W Trek. That's a famous 5-day, 4-night trek in the Torres del Paine National Park here in Chile, and here are my recommendations on what to pack. Well, hold on, scrap that. Don't listen to that guy, listen to me. I've just finished the W Trek, and I'll tell you what to pack so you don't make some of the same mistakes that that guy did. Now, there are a couple of different ways you can do the W Trek, and essentially I think there's like 5 different campsites along the way, and these also have refugios. So depending on how much you want to spend on the trek, you can take your own tent, even though pitches at the campsites to bring your own tent are pretty minimal. You can pay for a set-up tent or kind of a rooftop tent, or you can stay in a dorm room, like in a bed inside Refugio. So depending on how you choose to do the trek is going to dictate a little bit what you bring with you. We did it by staying in pre-set-up tents all the way along, which we were really grateful for. Essentially, at some campsites there's only 4 or 5 pitches to bring your own tent, and we weren't able to get those, so we had to pay a bit extra to stay in pre-set-up tents in every campground. But we were pretty happy with that at the end of the day, because it meant we didn't have to set up or take down kind of a wet tent or deal with the wind and the struggle to put up a tent at the end of a long day of hiking, or getting up early in the morning, having to pack it away wet and put it into your bag like that. So I would recommend doing that. If you've got the budget for it, I would recommend taking the pre-set up tents. Firstly, let's talk about what you're going to wear on your feet. And personally, I would say to go with a boot, especially if you are taking all of your own food with you and taking your own sleep system with you. If you're carrying a relatively heavy bag, I'd say more support on a slightly stiffer boot is worthwhile. You definitely could do the W Trek in some trail runner, and you'll see a lot of people suggesting that that's the way to go. But if you're going for a trail runner or a boot, I would definitely go with something that has some kind of plastic plate or carbon plate, or like a metal plate through the bottom of the shoe. The trail is pretty rocky, and there are some technical sections where you're going to be walking through kind of drainage and through small streams, going through bogs, doing river crossings. So having that plate underneath is just going to stop your feet getting really tired throughout the hike. If you don't have any protection from the rocks, you're going to really find that your feet are getting pretty fatigued at the end of the day. This boot here, which is the Mammut Sapuen, is what I hiked in. It actually has a metal plate running through it with a corrugated tip. Still get plenty of flex. And one thing as well is if you've got a boot, it's definitely useful to have a Gore-Tex or a waterproof boot. And if you're going for a trail runner, I would say not to bother going waterproof in all honesty, because the thing with the boot is you're going to get a waterproof layer up to here where the kind of tongue joins. So it's going to be a bit higher, and that is going to keep you dry when going through small streams or wet areas. If you've got a lower shoe that's this sort of height, the chances are you're going to get water inside the boot. And with a Gore-Tex shoe or a boot, if you get water inside it, it's not really going to dry. So if you're going for a trail runner, I'd probably recommend not really bothering with a waterproof trail runner, because they're more likely to dry out if you do get them wet. But do make sure there's a rock plate or something in there to protect your feet and stop you getting super tired. But my preference is definitely a boot. Secondly, as well, I would also recommend hiking with poles. I always recommend hiking with poles, and they do make a good difference, especially if you're going over more technical terrain, needing to do river crossings, go over small little logs or bridges or hop between rocks. Great for balance and great for efficiency. The thing with poles is you want to be using them throughout the whole trail. Use them from day one. Don't wait until you're tired, because they're essentially going to reduce the load on your back, give you better posture, and take some weight off your knees from the get-go. And if you can do that for the whole trek, you're going to find you're not as tired at the end of the day. As for other things you'll be wearing whilst out on the trek, I would always start my day in a couple of different layers. Obviously, when you're out in the mountains, it's pretty much going to be a bit chilly every morning. When you get out of your tent and start your hike, you're probably going to want a couple of layers on. I would always start with a merino t-shirt on the bottom, and then a merino mid-layer, and also another jacket over the top. That would be my go-to start for the day, and then as I started hiking, I would de-layer those and stuff them into the mesh outer pocket of my bag as I went. So I wouldn't have to go inside my bag and kind of rummage through it. I'd just be able to slide that stuff into the outside of the bag and just carry on hiking. Now, I'd say with any hike, especially a multi-day hike, choosing the right bag is really important. So on this trip, I used the Lowe Alpine AirZone Trek 45/55 litre. and I found that to be a really good size of bag to use. Bear in mind we didn't have to carry a tent with us, but I think I probably could have squeezed it into here as well if I needed to. But maybe you might want to go a little bit bigger if you are thinking of taking your own tent. But about a 50-litre bag to take your sleep system, all your clothing and all your food and all your cookware was absolutely perfect. And this bag was great. It does deserve some praise, so there will be a full review of this bag coming soon as well. And on top of this bag, I also actually use this little Arn shoulder pouch. Now this little pouch attaches to your shoulder strap of your bag and just means you have really quick access to a few things right here. So I would use that for a camera. I had a little video camera inside here. I could have my phone in here or some snacks. It was a really useful little addition to my bag actually, so I'd highly recommend checking those out as well. But the combination of those two was fantastic for the trail. And what I would say as well, it's quite important, I think, to be able to fit everything actually inside your bag, especially somewhere like Patagonia where the weather is relatively unpredictable and you could be caught in snow or in rain at really any time of year. You'll see a lot of people on trail that have rented gear that's quite bulky and quite large, and they've strapped it or hung it to the outside of their bag. And as a last resort, you know, maybe that's okay, but to be honest with you, things hanging on the side of your bag are going to be flapping around and knocking you, kind of getting in the way. And also if it does rain and your sleeping bag or your tent's on the outside of your bag and that gets soaked through, that's kind of game over. So I would look into investing into a decent bag where you can fit everything you need inside it. Any good bag like this as well is also going to come with a built-in rain cover. Again, obviously super useful for unpredictable weather. You can just throw that over your bag. But on top of your main bag, there are also a couple other bits that I would recommend just to make things a little bit more weatherproof. Personally, when I hike, I pretty much pack everything inside some kind of garbage bags. And that just makes everything more waterproof. I'm not just relying on the waterproof cover on the outside of the bag, but especially things like my sleeping bag or my camp clothes and stuff that I definitely need to keep dry, they're going inside plastic garbage bags on the inside of the bag too. The W Trek is essentially a W. So what you'll find is there's a few offshoots of kind of out and back trails if you're going to do the whole thing. And in certain places you can kind of drop off quite a lot of your bag or drop off a lot of the weight and do part of the hike with less. So because of that, what I would recommend taking, and something maybe we neglected to bring with us, would be either a very small kind of lightweight packable day bag like this, so you can drop your whole main bag and just take some water and some snacks on the kind of out and back sections of the trail, or even a much larger dry bag like this. You could also pack everything inside your bag, but then you can kind of pull this out, leave this behind, and then take your main bag with you to complete the kind of out and back sections and just leave this behind at camp. We had kind of smaller ones which did work, or we used our garbage bags, but I think on hindsight I would have taken a larger dry bag with me. First thing I always pack into my bag is my sleep system. It's great to have kind of bulkier but not too heavy things right at the bottom of your bag. And also this is one thing that can make a real difference to the size of bag you have to take and the weight you have to carry. And I think honestly the best investment that I've ever made in my backcountry or kind of multi-day hiking kit is getting a much better sleeping bag. So this is an 850 loft bag, and that high loft rating means that it's warm, but it's really packable and really compressible. So this bag is rated for a male or to a lower limit of -8, and it goes down to this size and it's only 600 grams. One of the big things you see is people can rent gear in Porto Natales before they head out onto the W Trek. And you'll see people that have rented sleeping bags, they have rented ginormous sleeping bags. So those bags can take up half of your backpack, or you end up having to hang them on the outside of your bag, which, as I mentioned, isn't ideal in any way. So do yourself a favor, if you're going to get into hiking or get into multi-day hikes, invest in a really nice sleeping bag that has some great quality loft in it and compresses to be really small. If you're carrying your own tent through the W Trek, you are also going to want some kind of sleeping pad. So this is the Nemo Tensor. Again, it packs down really small. It's probably one of the best balances between kind of weight, size, and also warmth rating. So we didn't actually really need these. And if you've booked pre-set up tents throughout the trek, you're not going to need a mat at all. We didn't realize, but they actually come with kind of a really nice comfortable foam mat in a pre-set up tent or in the rooftop style tents that you get at the Los Torres campgrounds. So essentially, we both ended up carrying an extra 500 or 600 grams round the trail with us for 5 days, and we never even took these out of the packet. So save yourself some weight. If you've got pre-set up tents, don't even bother bringing a mat. So one thing that does get a little overlooked when it comes to sleep systems is the pillow, and I would recommend taking one. You're not going to be provided with one. This is the Nemo pillow, and it's kind of a half foam, half air, kind of half blow up concoction. And it's super comfortable, obviously a little bit larger and a little bit heavier than some pillows, but kind of a great thing to put in. And because you're not taking a mat, maybe a better pillow is the way to go. It is possible to rent some of these things from the Refugios as well if you have forgotten them. However, you are going to pay quite a lot of money to do that. So I would recommend getting those in advance. Right, let's talk about food and cook sets. Now, unless you're being especially bougie and paying for the full board options at the Refugios and those takeout lunch boxes that they can provide, you're probably going to want to be carrying and cooking your own food. So we decided to take some dehydrated meals with us over to Chile. And these things are just super convenient. You just add hot water into the bag, seal them up and wait 15 minutes. And then you've got a pretty filling and pretty nice dinner. And obviously these things are just pretty compact and pretty lightweight. Now you can get hold of dehydrated meals like this in Puerto Natales in Chile. However, they are a bit more expensive and there isn't really as much variety. So it probably is worth taking some with you from home. We didn't have any problems taking these on the plane or taking them into Chile. We did even write down on our declaration that we had some dried food with us, and customs in Chile weren't even interested in seeing it. So I don't think you'll have any problems if you do want to take some stuff like this with you from wherever you live. On top of that though, Puerto Natales does have a few different kind of grocery stores or shops you can get food in, and some of it would be pretty useful on a hike. There are a few dried food options like couscous or dried mash, ramen noodles, kind of pastas and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't particularly hard to get hold of the other things that we needed for the rest of our trek. However, one thing I would take note of, and what we didn't realize, is that you cannot cook anywhere on trail in Patagonia. You can only cook in very designated zones. That's because in the past they just had really bad wildfires that have wiped out huge proportions of the forests in certain parts of the park. Because of that, you can only use Jetboils and any camping stoves inside kind of designated areas inside the campground areas. Often that's inside a kitchen block, actually inside. So we thought we could go out and maybe cook some nice kind of warm meals midway through trail and have a nice break. So we took a bit too much dried food with us. So realistically, what you're going to have to do is for every lunch that you're on trail or any snacks that are on trail, they are going to have to be kind of fresh food that you can eat instantly. Now, as for actual cook sets, we kind of took two different options. Both the Jetboil Flash, the 1 litre, and also the ceramic pot from Jetboil, just depending on what we wanted to cook. The Jetboil definitely is by far the most efficient and quickest way to boil water, so it's great to go along with those dehydrated meals. You can boil water in no time at all and get it straight in there. Ideal if it's a bit cold and you just don't want to be outside cooking for too long, or if you're super hungry and want to eat. It's also really easy to pack because everything you need for it kind of fits inside. Like inside here, we've got the stand for the gas canister, we've got the burner, and we've got a pot stand as well if you want to use the ceramic pot on top. And that all just fits inside the Jetboil. So super nice and easy. So for either one of these systems, you would need a gas canister. And these are easy enough to find actually in Chile and Puerto Natales. You can't fly with something like this, so don't buy it before you get to the airport. Wait until you land in Chile to grab one. If you really wanted to risk it, the chances are you could pick up some free ones from the Refugios left behind by other campers, ones that are kind of half used. It would save you some weight and space in your bag that you could just pick one up every day and then leave it when you're done with it. But obviously if you turned up to a campground and there weren't any available, you might not be eating a hot dinner that night. So the Jetboil Flash is perfect for dehydrated meals, or just for boiling water to make tea and coffees. But if you want to cook, it's definitely worth having something a bit larger. So that is when the ceramic pot came in really useful for us. We can just use that with the same burner that the Flash comes with, using that pot stand. And it's got kind of a stick-free coating. So this is what we would do any kind of ramen noodles in here, or fry up any kind of sausage or veg or anything you wanted to make a more substantial meal with. This would be the way to go. So I'm really glad we did have both. It just gave us more options on what we were actually able to cook whilst out on the hike. And then obviously this is a bit of an awkward shape, so it can be a bit harder to pack. It's not particularly heavy, but you can obviously keep a lot of stuff inside it. Like we've got this microfiber towel used for washing up. This little MSR scraper that is super useful as well, has a brush on one end and a scraper on the other. So really useful to wash up your pots afterwards. Some Sea to Summit pocket soap. Again, this stuff is super useful if you want to do any washing up or even wash yourself. Comes off in little slithers, really compact, really light. I've got a backup lighter as well. The burner for the Jetboil does come with a sparker, and it hasn't failed us yet, but just in case, always bring a lighter. And then for things to eat out of, we've also got a couple of bowls from Sea to Summit inside the pot here. And these guys just kind of pop open. And they're actually pretty sturdy, so really small, lightweight way of taking a bowl, very, very packable, super useful, would highly recommend those. And then on top of that as well, we've got a long titanium spoon from Traverse. Very, very light, very small, but perfect for these kind of dehydrated meals when you're eating out of that longer bag. And then as well, I've got a set of Sea to Summit cutlery here. It's a knife, fork and spoon, and this stuff is made out of aluminium, I believe, and it weighs like 26 grams for all 3 pieces of cutlery. So in all honesty, there's not really a reason to not take cutlery with you. It is so light and so easy to pack. You might as well invest in a nice little set like that. Doesn't even set you back that much money. But that was it for our cook sets. And again, I was carrying this and my partner was carrying the other pot, so we did split up the weight a little bit. One thing to note about food and the W Trek is that the Refugios sell a lot of it. They have little snack shops that will sell instant noodles or biscuits, or you can buy little pizzas or even go to the restaurant and have quite a fancy meal. So I would recommend taking a credit card with you in case you want to grab a pop or a chocolate bar or even a beer in the evening. It's pretty awesome to have that as an option. And also as well, you're going to find that they do offer hot water at a lot of the Refugios as well. When their shop's open, you might be able to just go in and fill up your dehydrated meal directly from a kind of a hot boiling water tap. They might ask for a tip for that, but it is an option. You could potentially get away without taking a stove at all if you were just having dehydrated meals. But again, it could be a little bit risky if that shop or access to that hot water is closed when you need it. As for water, every Refugio or camp provides drinkable tap water, so you can fill up directly from the tap. I carried all of my water in this 3-litre hydration bladder that just slips down the back of my bag, and those are super useful because you can have the hose running right down to your mouth and you can just drink a little bit now and then and drink when you're thirsty and stay hydrated all day. We did, however, also travel with a Katadyn BeFree and a Steripen. Now, everyone will say to you that you can drink the water anywhere in the Torres del Paine National Park without any issues, which could very well be true, and I'm sure the water is very, very pure. But to be honest with you, as with any backcountry situation, you don't know for sure what's upstream from you. You don't know if someone's gone to the toilet in it. You don't know if there's an animal that's passed away in the river upstream. So I'd always recommend filtering water if you are drinking from some kind of stream anyway. And the combination of the Katadyn BeFree and the Steripen is going to kill 99% of bacteria, as well as 99% of viruses using the UV light on the Steripen. So a great little lightweight combination. Before we get into my recommendation of kind of layers and clothing to take with you, I wanted to talk about a few bits that are a little bit more specific to the W Trek and also to the fact that there are Refugios on trail. So firstly, I'd recommend taking a pair of slippers with you, like these guys here. You're not actually going to be allowed inside the Refugios or inside the restaurants with your boots on, so you might want something else to wear on your feet. And it's also great to have something that just isn't your boots when you get to camp if you want to relax. There's maybe 1 or 2 days on the trail where you're not going to do that much distance and you might get to camp a bit early. So to be able to take those boots off and throw on a nice comfy pair of slippers is definitely worthwhile. Highly recommend taking a pair with you. Another thing to think of as well is that, like, obviously there are shared showers at some of these Refugios with hot water, so it is pretty nice to have a shower. So maybe rather than slippers, you might want to take some kind of slide-on sandal or something you can actually wear in the shower as well. In regards to showers, again, it might be worth taking a little microfiber towel with you. These things are pretty packable and light. You can, again, rent towels at the Refugios, but if you're renting all this stuff, it's gonna add up pretty quickly because the Refugios aren't cheap in regards to the snacks that they sell or the things that they rent. But it's fantastic to have a hot shower after a day of hiking, so definitely bring a microfiber packable towel with you. The Refugios also have power, so you can charge all your accessories or charge your battery pack whilst you're out there. So definitely take a couple of adapters with you. In Chile, they use essentially the 2-pronged rounded plug, the same thing that you'd use in kind of a lot of mainland Europe. So a couple of those are really useful. And what I'd also say as well is actually bring a battery pack with you. A lot of these power sockets are kind of out in the open, so anyone can kind of come and grab your gear. And some of them stay on overnight. So what you can do with a battery pack, it's a little bit less valuable. I would just leave this to charge overnight, and then I'm not worried about anyone taking it. And then from this battery pack, I can then charge my head torch on my phone or my little camera accessories, and I can just do that whenever I need to. One other little thing to consider as well is maybe a pair of micro spikes. Now, we actually went and did the trail in April and we were expecting it to potentially be quite icy and snowy, so we did carry a pair of micro spikes with us. However, luckily, it was beautiful the whole time and it was 10, 15 degrees. We were hiking in our t-shirts and we really didn't come across much snow or frost at all, but still probably a worthy thing to take with you. And again, you might think you're safe in December, January at the height of summer, but you could come across snow. So definitely could be worth popping a pair of these in your bag. As for layers, there are definitely a few layers that I would be taking with me pretty much on any hike, and definitely in a place like Patagonia. It can be incredibly windy, it can be snowing, it can be raining, and you can get all of that in just one day. So I'd highly recommend taking some kind of down jacket with you. This again is an 850 loft down jacket, and as I mentioned before, that means it's very, very packable and lightweight. So I can get this down to almost this sort of size, and it fits into my bag really easily and doesn't take up much room. On top of that, you're also going to want to take some waterproofs, and take some good waterproofs as well. They're going to help with the wind as well as obviously the rain. So I had with me some Gore-Tex layers. This is the Arc'teryx Beta jacket. Again, a fantastic jacket. I was wearing this just when it was windy and the wind was a bit cold, not even so much when it was raining, but definitely want to have this in your bag and want to have it somewhere towards the top of your bag so you can get quick access to it. I would also travel with a pair of waterproof trousers. Now, hopefully you're not going to have to use a pair of waterproof trousers, but if you get soaked through, it's not ideal. And one thing I would definitely recommend in regards to waterproof trousers is get a pair that has a really long zip. Ideally a zip that goes all the way down the trouser, and that just means you can get the pants on and off without having to take your boots on and off, and it means you don't get the inside of your pants super dirty if you're trying to get them on with your boots on. So yeah, invest in something with a good old zip on the side, and obviously as always Gore-Tex is a pretty safe bet in regards to the level of waterproofing and breathability. So in regards to clothing, this is definitely where you can save a bit of weight and a bit of space in your bag, especially if you have some kind of nicer pieces that are designed for hiking or kind of activity. And as always, I always recommend merino layers. Like I said, I'd start off my hike in merino, but I'd also take maybe 1 or 2 extra merino t-shirts with me. The best thing about merino is obviously it doesn't smell too bad, it dries really fast, so you can get away with not taking much with you. Essentially, you can wear one, if that gets wet, switch to a dry one, and then the other one's going to dry by the time you need it. So realistically, 1 or 2 is probably all you need. Then of course, I'm just going to have a couple of spare pairs of pants. I'm going to have a couple of pairs of merino socks, spare ones again. You don't need 1 pair for every single day. If they're merino, you're going to get away with maybe having 2 spare pairs just in case your feet get wet. And then at camp, I'm going to have some merino base layers. I'm going to have some merino trousers and also a merino long sleeve. I'm going to wear these whilst I sleep as well. This is going to help keep me warm at night time and also mean that I'm not going to get my sleeping bag super dirty. So definitely a great investment. If it's a super cold morning or when you're hiking as well, you can also pop these underneath your trousers to start. And then one little extra here as well, I've actually got a very, very lightweight pair of trousers here. So these are actually the North Face Wander pant they're called, but they're really light and really thin and they don't take up a lot of room. And I'm just taking those in case the trousers that I'm going to be hiking in pretty much every day get really wet. And it's just an alternative that I can wear whilst those ones dry out, or if I want to change into something lighter and easier whilst I'm at camp. And then of course I would recommend taking a pair of gloves with you. In fact, I'd actually recommend taking 2 pairs of gloves. I carry 2 pairs with me. Thankfully, I didn't need the second pair, but obviously if these get really wet, your hands are going to get pretty cold, so it's nice to have a pair to swap out into. Maybe even consider investing in a waterproof pair for one of those pairs as well. Then obviously I'll be taking a cap with me for the sun, but always a toque in my bag if it does get cold or later on at night. A pair of sunglasses. Now I would recommend taking a pair of sunglasses with you no matter what the forecast is going to be, because it can be super windy in Patagonia and then it does kick up a lot of dust and rock, and you're going to want that just to protect your eyes from that, if anything, protect your eyes from the wind and the dust and obviously any UV rays. So definitely do not forget to take a pair of sunglasses with you. And then finally, a bit of a wash kit and a few other little accessories. A buff is super useful. Again, really just to kind of block the wind or keep your nose warm first thing in the morning. And again, they're so lightweight, these things, you might as well throw one in your bag. We've of course got a head torch. This is a rechargeable head torch, which I can recharge at the Refugios or off that battery pack. Super useful bit of kit. And then as always, I always take with me a Garmin InReach. Obviously the W Trek is a relatively well-trodden trail. You have obviously people at the Refugios every kind of 15, 20 kilometers, but at the end of the day, if you get kind of stuck or roll an ankle in the wrong place, having some way to make contact with people or ask for a rescue is super useful, so I always carry that with me no matter what the hike. I then got a small medical kit here which has some plasters in there, some tape, some antiseptic wipes and a few other pieces. Helps mainly with blisters or with very small injuries. And then also a little bug net. There was 1 or 2 occasions where there were a few bugs out, but it wasn't actually that bad, but certain times the trail can be bad, and they're so light and small it's probably worth popping one in your bag anyway. I also always take some kind of multi-tool with me, like this Leatherman Wingman. Just a super useful thing to have with you in case anything breaks and you just need to fix things on the fly. Super, super useful. So as for a bit of a wash kit as well, I just kind of took a toothbrush, some toothpaste, some sun cream, some bug spray, and not a lot else, to be honest with you. We had a few wet wipes as well, and you want to divide those up and take them out of the big thick packet and put them into a Ziploc bag just to save some space. But a lot of the Refugios actually offered some kind of soap or body wash in their showers, so really you don't even really need to take that. And if you do, I would just take a very small pot of it, decant it into a smaller pot. So that's about it. That's everything I took with me on the W trek. Obviously, if you're staying in Refugios and having catered meals, you're going to be able to take a lot less with you. And if you're staying in your own tent, you're going to need to pop your tent in your bag as well as that kind of sleeping pad. But as with any trip like this, you can obviously be prepared for it in different ways. You can have different levels of preparedness. And like I said, we saw people out on the trail in kind of tennis shoes with carrying carrier bags in their hand and tents slung over their shoulders. And obviously you can do it like that, but it's not going to be enjoyable. The better you pack and the better your equipment fits you, and if you can fit everything inside your bag, the better time you're going to have on the trail, the more time you're going to just be able to spend enjoying your surroundings and enjoying the trail rather than worrying about what parts of your body ache. So if you have any further questions, feel free to leave those in the comments below or pop into a Wild Earth store and ask the guys there for recommendations on bags as well.